Today, though, we're actually going to be doing a top 10 list that came about as a result of a conversation that was going on during our members hangout that we do every month on YouTube with our tier 3 members. Nice. And then we started talking about reforming the criminal justice system. And I thought, you know what, let's dive into this a little bit more. I want to know what Francesca has to say about it. If it were up to us, what are the 10 reforms we would make to the criminal justice system? And I think you can probably agree that we rapidly discovered that 10 ain't enough. And so this is gonna be one of those that we'll have to return to with follow-up lists in the future. But I chose some that matter to me personally. I'm not even saying that these would be the most consequential in all cases, but I would just love to see each of these changes made. But what do you think?
This is so hard because there's so many, and I wish I were versed enough on the issue to be able to bucket them, and then be like, and then like cheat by bucketing them and blah. Because the criminal justice system is all the things. It's policing to prisons, and that is like, in my mind, 2 separate things. But
big topic, yeah,
huge topic.
Well, would you like to get us started off?
I think the number 1 or number 5 for me would be, I'm focused more on prisons and the PIC, the prison industrial complex. But the number 1 would be stop all new prison construction. I think that is really important. We can't have alternative solutions to the carceral system when we continue to build and build, and there's obviously private money, and that's another piece of this, but we just need to stop. We need to stop building new prisons. Right now in New York, they're going over this like big debate about whether they break up Rikers Island, Rikers jail, into a number of different jails that are like in boroughs, like 5 different jails. And actually on my show, we were talking about with Victoria Law, who wrote an entire book on myths around the prison industrial complex, that like there used to be 5 separate jails, and Rikers was a solution to those awful jails. So it's like, no matter whether you build a new state-of-the-art facility, it's still bad. All of these new state-of-the-arts, it's still dehumanizing and awful and not rehabilitative at all. The recidivism rate, meaning the rate at which people recommit crimes, is huge once they get out of these awful, inhumane situations, which is like, duh.
Well, the solution is to never release them. Obviously, there's no other change you can make. You just don't ever release them.
Yes, so my solution, number 1, and this is small, just stop building new prisons. Okay. So
yeah, especially when it seems like the laws are set up to fill whatever space you have. And let's have some empty prisons. How about that?
Yeah.
Anyway, I do like that. I might have something related to that. My number 5 is going to be, I have a sort of specific version of it and a wider version of it. The specific change, I suppose, would be finally the legalization, not just decriminalization, but legalization of marijuana. And honestly, I'd be fine with quite a few other drugs being added to that, with the goal being the ending of the war on drugs, which is obviously a multifaceted thing that affects basically every level of the criminal justice system. But it is so needless, so archaic, so against what people actually want. And the fact that it's illegal justifies so many other abuses. Like, it's one of the things that has so many little ripple effects, that it allows the cops to operate in certain ways. It justifies inflated police budgets. Making that one change, I think, would cause so many other ripple effects that would be incredibly positive throughout every level of the criminal justice system.
Yes, a million times yes. And I don't want to take one of mine, but I totally agree with that.
Okay, well, I like it. I want you to agree.
They're not going to do it on a federal level, but they should. Most, even Republican voters, want the legalization of marijuana. It's
so
ridiculous.
It's so dumb. 2022.
It's so dumb.
2022. Okay.
What's
your number 4?
Number 4, also in the prison system, but ending mandatory minimum sentencing on a statewide, on a federal level, is really important. I think that, yes, violent crimes are obviously worse than petty theft or drug possession. But I leave that up to the lawyers, the defenders, the judges, who you would assume are good, know these things, understand generally what the sentencing could be, and then therefore have a case-by-case basis. You look at people as they are human rather than just saying, well, no, sorry, the minimum for possession of meth is going to be 10 years, so done. Or the minimum for whatever it might be. And again, usually they're all nonviolent drug offenses. So I would just say, no matter what it is, ending mandatory minimums just gives people back their humanity and their ability to at least have their day in court. I mean, what's so funny with Ketanji Brown Jackson, and you have all these Republicans getting mad at her, and essentially she's there arguing for a basic constitutional right, which is the right to have your case argued before
on the merits.
Exactly, on the merits. And I know we were talking about awful things like child pornography, and we don't want to think about that, and we want to throw the book at them supposedly, but it's like on the merits of whether or not it is the same thing to be able to download in a minute a bunch of images, or go to the mailbox every single day and send 500 images. Like, there's a pretty big difference, for like a year. And it's so funny how you're just like, this is the woman who's defending freedom. The people who give their day in court in front of a judge, in front of a jury, without mandatory minimums, they're defending the Constitution more so than these other folks. So anyway, stop
being political opportunists. Yeah. No, I like that. Getting rid of that. I mean, I in my mind, I would lump in things like 3 strikes, basically these shortcuts to just locking people up easier and for longer periods of time.
Yes.
Outside the merits of the actual case. My number 4 is not going to be one of the things that actually would affect as many people as any of these other changes. But to me, it's a philosophical thing. It's a simple thing. It should be an easy thing. No more capital punishment. Again, it doesn't affect nearly as many people as the other changes, but there's high stakes for the ones that it does. Our government should not be in the business of killing people. That's as much as possible. I would like to apply that to other aspects of what our government does too. But no, when it comes to that, it makes no sense philosophically. It doesn't have the effect that its defenders pretend to believe that it does, and they know that it doesn't from decades of academia. Our government shouldn't do it. It should be as simple as that. This should be the easiest change, and yet we persist. And tons and tons and tons of money goes into trying to kill people that generally at that point are senior citizens that have been in jail for literally decades. We just shouldn't be doing it.
Yes, agreed. That is an overlap. My number 3.
Oh, I don't mind overlaps. Feel free. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is stop criminalizing homelessness. Just stop it. I'm sorry. Putting a tent on the street, like urinating on the street because you don't have access to a bathroom, not being able to afford a home, those are not crimes. I'm sorry. Sleeping on the street, it's not a crime. It is a symptom of a broader problem. Stop detaching homelessness from housing. It's insane the way we do this all the time. We think there's something fundamentally wrong with the homeless. Oh yeah. Well, the homeless are a mutant type creature that no. I just read 70% of the homeless in San Francisco, which has a huge population of unhoused people, were once housed. Funny. It's almost like saying, 100% of homeless people are human. Like, we're born, have mothers and fathers, have children. This is the thing. Like, it's not about, and another thing is addiction and mental illness, which definitely can go hand in hand with, homeless populations. Why do we always think that it's the mental illness and the addiction that led to their homelessness, rather than the other way around? As a lot of folks have pointed out, that homelessness leads to addiction. It leads to drug use. It leads to mental illness, because there's nothing more traumatizing than being without a home. So it is probably, in my mind, one of the worst uses of police and state violence, and is trying to lock up the homeless. I just stop it.
Yeah. 100%. It fits kind of into one of mine that's coming up, but yeah, 100%. And look, it's obviously an incredibly difficult problem to solve. especially when so many of the people that pretend that that's what they're trying to do aren't really trying to solve it. They're trying to manage it in a particular way that fits in with their worldview and their view of these people effectively.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my number 3 is an overlap with you in large part. Mine would be no private prisons. So I would, that overlaps a bit with no more new construction, but also nationalize all the private prisons and then shut down as many of them as possible. But no, the private companies should not be making money off of any of this. Even if they were doing a good job, like let's say that there weren't constant investigations showing that there's terrible outcomes in terms of health and mental well-being and COVID and all. Let's pretend that none of that's there. Rampant sexual assault and all that, abuse. Let's pretend that none of that was there. I don't think corporations should be making money off of locking people up.
Yeah.
But then also they're mistreating these people in 1,000 different ways. And then also they get to take a tiny fraction of the massive money they make and then give it to politicians to criminalize things that will produce more customers for their business.
Yep.
It is madness that any of this is allowed. It should be outlawed. There are certain industries that private corporations should not be able to be involved in. This is, I think, indisputably one of the most clear.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same reason, like, we get, and everyone gets upset when we think about like privatizing Medicare or privatizing the VA. Like, no, we wouldn't do that. And the same thing with detention or private prisons, which often are detention facilities, because of course we rely on prisons to do the stuff that we just politically failed to do, which is have any kind of immigration system that is expedient and functional. So we're just like, no, just detain, lock up.
100%.
Ugh. All right.
What's your number two?
Number 2 is reinstate voting rights as soon as people get out. None of this, you can't vote.
You rank that very high.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that's huge. I mean, I think in addition to job training and lack of access to housing and the fact that maybe I can lump it into, again, a bucket of all the stigma that comes from when someone is formerly incarcerated and all the difficulty it is, from renting a place to getting a job to voting. And so the first people that need to drop that stigma is the United States government. This person has served their time. Isn't that the point of the criminal justice system? Why would you continue to punish them afterward?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's one of the most frustrating things too, because the way that our society works and all of the stigma, they don't ever have to make a case for why it makes sense to bar it. They don't, because there isn't a case to be made. Their case is they're still bad people and you know it.
Right.
You know it, they're bad, you hate them, you should hate them, you're right to hate them. Wouldn't it be great if even after they get out, we get to do things that own them? That's a fact. It's like one of the earliest forms of owning the libs. It's just owning the formerly incarcerated makes them feel good. They want to do that. And no, I'm better than those people, so I get to do things that those people don't get to do. That's their entire case.
Yeah, and then when they eventually become homeless, we can recriminalize them and I can step over them and feel superior about myself.
Feel even more superior, yeah. And it's like this is one of those ones where even most Democratic politicians don't have the right position on this. Bernie got attacked a ton in the last cycle for pushing for people to get their rights back. Florida, by the way, did their ballot initiative and shockingly, it actually passed to reenfranchise people. And then the legislature decided, no, screw all you. We're gonna add all of these requirements of fines and all this paperwork and everything to make it as difficult as possible for you to get the right back.
John, you are a poli-sci major. How the hell is any of that legal? Like, I never understand when a legislature can just override a popular vote.
Well, I mean, but think about it. Like when you set up the Constitution in certain states, because of course ballot initiatives are run very differently or don't even exist in some states. There's only. So sometimes it is convenient to a legislature to set up a system like that because there might be some things that they'd like to have done that they don't want to have to be involved in.
Sure.
But they also don't want to cede power to the masses. And so often there's get out of jail free cards. There's ways and
they should be able. I mean, look, you can maybe kick it back to another. I don't know, or like send it to committee.
That happens.
I don't know.
Sometimes. But in this case, it's not that they're directly contradicting it. It's that they're setting up all this additional bureaucracy to gut the spirit, if not the letter, of the ballot initiative. It's frustrating. I actually want to check in to see how much work has been done in that area because it's been a few years now. Anyway, my number 2 is it's a more of a personal one, and mostly I would want this done as an experiment. I would like to see what ripples come from this one, and that would be no more shield protection for gun companies from prosecution. They have this special status of all products where using their product basically in the way that it's designed to commit crimes does not implicate them in any way. And they have been protected like no other industry has. I don't know what would happen if you took that away. Would that change the way they market guns? What sorts of guns they sell? I don't know, but I want to see it. Something has to be done. I think this has a chance of being part of the solution. So I say strip that protection away.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they did with tobacco companies.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
And you can still smoke, but there's a little bit less needless death, which is good.
Right.
So that only leaves your number 1.
Well, number 1 is, I think, the most glaring. It's the thing that makes us, just like a lot of things in this country, not actually part of a democratic world. And that is capital punishment. It's the death penalty, and I would abolish it immediately.
Oh, the crossover.
I think that's one of the most important pieces because it's a moral question. I mean, I do think it's a moral issue, and I will say on moral grounds, it is immoral for the state to kill people, especially for the crime of murder. I'm gonna show you that murder is wrong by killing you. What?
Yep.
That makes no sense whatsoever. So,
well, and especially, sorry, really fast.
No, yeah.
For a conservative to be like, no, that's not fair because this is the state. They're better than us. They should be the only. Wait, but you pretend to be so suspicious of government power, and you cede the power over life and death to them. But again, but only against bad people, Francesca.
Oh, and pregnant people who don't want to be pregnant. Then, of course, the state has almighty power to decide who lives and who dies. That's great. Yeah. Or what lives and what dies. So, I mean, it's like we're like one of 6 countries in the world, and I don't know. The other countries are like Iran, who executes people at the rate that we do. Like, is this something to be proud of? It's not. So it's got to go, and I think it would mean a lot. The trickle-down effect of getting rid of capital punishment, I think, would be huge, even though it doesn't affect a grand majority of incarcerated people right now.
And anything, it would be like the simplest thing to change.
Totally.
In theory. Mine would not be as simple, and it's the broadest of mine. I'm gonna call, you know what, just to piss off people, I'm just gonna call it defund the police. Redirection of public funds away from the over policing of our society. Yes. So that the things that need actual experts who are qualified to deal with them, mental health emergencies, things like that, get the actual experts they need rather than just, we're gonna have the cops do literally everything. And we're gonna ignore for decades and decades and decades all of the obvious negative consequences of that approach. And you know, I think it's wider than just that. Like getting the police out of every situation. They don't need to be involved in everything. Like the over policing of youth, the creating sort of this revolving door of people going to prison and being more likely to go again. Like a lot of that is just, there is too much emphasis put on policing. It is the solution to every problem, even the problems that it itself causes. And so we need to redirect the funding if that's the way it needs to be presented, so that the overly sensitive don't get freaked out by slogans. That's my
even progressives and leftists who misunderstand this slogan. Honestly, I think it's a tame slogan. Personally, I won't fight for it till my death, but I do think it's a tame slogan, and I 100% agree with you. What kind of society spends like 50%? What kind of city spends 50% of its discretionary budget on policing, like, or more?
LA.
Los Angeles. Why are we doing this? What purpose? Who does this help? And actually, it's always Democrats. It's always crappy Dems who do not have any policy to alleviate inequality, or create job training programs or create sort of any kind of economic programs to help people. And then they're like, oh, lock them up, police it.
Yep.
And you'll notice the people who are the most against the defund the police, they live in neighborhoods, and not all. I know some people who live in precarious neighborhoods, in a little more dangerous neighborhoods, who do like police presence, but the degree and extent to the police presence in certain neighborhoods, I think is absolutely overblown, makes people less safe. We know this, and half the time, whatever, we need other forces to call upon and not just armed dudes with like mom issues.
100%. Well, those are just a few of our fixes. I'm sure we could come up with 10, 20, 30 more each. And perhaps at some point we will. The best way to see that is to continue to support us on YouTube as a member, as you already are, and you'll get access to those. So thank you to everybody who makes this content possible. We always have fun doing these, especially when they're driven by the things you want to hear us talk about, as this one was. So
this is great.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Francesca, for your contributions. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll see you all next time.